So the article is titled, well, it's not really an article, it's an interview, but it's called Cause 2013, an interview with Councilman Steve Kozachik. Okay, Dr. John Newport wrote this monstrosity. He's a centrist, Democrat, author, big fan, a little creepy of how big a fan he is of Steve K. I think he likes him a little bit too much. Yeah. At one point, I think in my notes, yeah, there it is right there. Halfway up and through the first page, I wrote out to the side, get a room. So we'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. Centrist Democrat author, speaker, social commentator who lives in Tucson, loves its people and its city not as much as he loves Steve K. He reminds me of that little tiny, like, dog that runs around in the cartoons, you know, with the big guy and just panders to him the whole time. That's what he really... You're so great, Steve K. You're so wonderful. All right, so I read this horrible thing, so you didn't have to. True story, I actually took my sons to a play place yesterday to get energy out, knowing that I could use it as an excuse to sit down through these 6 pages to do notes, because if I had to do it at home without any kind of ulterior motive, I probably would have slit my wrists. So I said, how am I going to do? I know what I'll do. I'll kill 2 birds. I'll let my boys can get some energy out, and I'll just kill some time while I'm sitting there while they play. It goes like this. Councilman Steve Kozachik, representing Central Tucson's Ward 6, is a dynamo of energy, to say the least. Wow. Right out of the gate. Oh. Sparkles. I first became acquainted with Steve through the gun buyback he organized, followed by a very successful political forum he convened at the Loft in early January. I was fortunate to be able to interview him concerning his performance during his first term and what he hopes to accomplish in his second term. Okay, so his lefty blog, by the way. Okay. Come with me, Dr. John Newport's. And you'll be in a world of pure imagination. It's called Healing Tucson. Okay. He starts off with this. Healing Tucson asks this question. I've formed the distinct impression that you are a hardworking guy who is totally dedicated to the welfare of people, both in your ward and throughout our community. Just verbal vomit. It's just like, I've formed the distinct impression that you're awesome. Tell me about how awesome you are. You also come across as bending over backwards to thoroughly examine both sides of the issues you take on. Would you care to comment on this? You not only are you awesome, but you're beyond awesome. You're spectacularly awesome. Can you please talk to me more and tell me why it is you are so awesome in your awesomeness? Would you care to comment all these wonderful things I just said about you? Steve K., I strongly believe, John, that each constituent brings to the table a unique set of life experience, knowledge, and expectations, and that his or her voice needs to be heard and given full and fair consideration. Now, I want you to hang on to that. Hang on to that little nugget right there. A lot of nuggets this morning. Maybe using that word too much. Hang on to that statement, that his or her voice, unique experience, knowledge, expectations, each constituent needs to be heard and given full and fair consideration. Just hang on to that, okay? All right. I attempt to give everyone in the room the Hatfields and McCoys, so to speak, in order to hear everyone out and work together with them to move towards a consensus. I believe it is essential for any government official to make an earnest effort to get a feel for the pulse of the spectrum of his or her constituents. I'm so great, John, to everyone. Well, to everyone I don't stab in the back. So, okay. So, Healing Tucson, Dr. John Newport continues. Steve, I've also noticed that you come across as a champion of citizens taking an activist stance and being directly involved in important issues at a local level. Can you comment on your overall role as a champion of citizen involvement in the political process, both in general and with particular reference to the Walmart liquor license issue? That's where I wrote, get a room already. Yeah, I really hope this was an interview taking place in a hot tub, right? They were, sipping on little drinks with the umbrellas in there because it's getting a little creepy. I do like you come across as a champion. Can you tell me how it is you're a champion? Steve K responds with this. As I jog down the street in the morning and ride my bike throughout our community, I try to embody my belief that I am my neighbor's neighbor. So much so that they don't mind when I urinate on their walls. Oh, I'm sorry. I take very seriously my obligation to be both accessible and responsive to all my constituents. This is me, Steve, being awesome. Now, they go over a few paragraphs of talking about the Walmart issue, and it's in TUSD, not worth the time. Again, I read through this so you didn't have to. I'm just bringing you some of the finer points here. Okay. Healing Tucson now moves to another issue. What's funny about this article, too, I just want to point out, is that there is nothing actually important as it relates to the growth of Tucson in any of this. It's basically is Dr. John Newport feeding him a bunch of gobbledygook that he cares about because he just thinks that Steve is the most awesomeness guy ever and wants to make Steve look even more awesomer. Healing Tucson. Let's turn now to animal rights. I know you have been a vocal advocate of rescuing animals who turn up at the Pima County Animal Shelter, where you state that 11,000 animals were euthanized last year. Can you comment on why you have chosen to take on this issue? Steve K's response, a simple answer to your question is, I love animals, ! He then spends 4 paragraphs talking about animals. Swoon, Steve loves animals too. Healing Tucson, after Steve comments for 4 paragraphs about animals, asks this, I like the idea of encouraging folks to provide foster placement for these animals. Steve K, animal hero activist. All right, moving on. Healing Tucson asks Steve this. Steve, on July 9th, you posted a letter from Steve K, which, among other things, highlights your leading fight against the state for home rule as a major focus of your first term. Steve responds, I firmly believe that home rule is essential to any local government unit in carrying out its rightful mission of positively engaging citizens in the process of attempting to resolve issues in a manner that best serves the overall community. Now, I only bring this particular issue up because of what he gets to next. Gun control is a perfect example. It's totally absurd for someone in Phoenix, Prescott, or Flagstaff to dictate to Tucson what we can and cannot do in this area. Let me stop there real quick. So, we shouldn't have any laws being crafted at the state level at all? Because, see, later on in this, he goes and slams the individuals taking part in the people's veto in this. And it just ends up becoming very hypocritical of him. And I'll get back to that other point that I made at the beginning about making sure that everybody has a voice. He goes on to say, you may recall that the primary purpose of my gun buyback was to provide citizens owning guns they no longer wish to possess with an opportunity to sell these weapons with the understanding that they would be taken out of circulation. I am currently taking a proactive stance to support a city council proposal that would bar riders from carrying a loaded weapon on public transportation. To this date, the state has blocked Tucson from enacting and enforcing such legislation. I'm currently working with the citizens group called Moms Demand Action, which is organizing a rally to be held on buses riding between Tucson and Phoenix to protest this obstructionist posture. Still, nothing about what's actually important to Tucson, and more evidence that he has simply turned into a political activist. All right, coming up, I'm going to share with you the portion where he talks about you individuals who are out there not only signing the people's veto petition to stop the Medicaid expansion, but also taking away your valuable time to go and make that opportunity available to individuals as they go to and from work in the morning. And we'll have Frank Antonori on the phone to comment on Steve Kozachik's comments as well. It's the John Justice Show on 104.1 The Truth, Right Talk for Tucson.